Hello viewers, before we continue with this amazing story, we will like you to be part of our family. Subscribe today and turn on the notification bell, watch to the end and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. It was a Friday evening, one of those hot, sticky nights when the air in Ikeja feels heavy and the street lights flicker like they can barely handle the weight of the city's energy. The buka, Mama Ngozi's joint, was buzzing as usual. Small plastic tables, plastic chairs, and that smell of freshly fried plantains and hot pepper soup. It was a regular night until something went wrong. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the corner of the buka, minding my own business, sipping on my bottle of Fanta and watching people come and go. Moyo was hustling around as usual, balancing trays full of umla and ifo, calling out orders, doing her best to keep the place running smoothly. She didn't have time for nonsense. But that day, she got more than she bargained for. A man walked in, sharp, wearing a white shirt that looked like it had just come out of the dry cleaners. The kind of shirt you only see in Lagos if someone's trying to show off. He looked around, scanning the place with eyes that seemed to miss nothing. No one knew who he was at first, but it was obvious he wasn't a regular. His vibe screamed money. Big money. He walked up to Moyo, who was just dropping off a bowl of soup at a table. "Excuse me, are you the one who ruined my shirt last week?" the man asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. Moyo froze. I could see it in her face. She recognized him immediately. This was the guy she'd accidentally spilled soup on during her shift last week. She'd apologized profusely, but the guy hadn't taken it well. "I'm sorry, sir," Moyo stammered, already feeling her heart sink. "It was an accident, I didn't mean." Before she could finish her sentence, the guy slapped her across the face. "Accident?" he yelled, his voice rising. "I don't think so. Look at my shirt." The sound of the slap echoed through the room. The place went dead silent. It was as if time itself had stopped. I saw the shock on Moyo's face, her eyes wide, her mouth open, but no words came out. She stood there, motionless, staring at the man like she didn't know what to do. I wanted to say something, do something. But what could I do? Nobody wanted to get involved, not in this part of Lagos. People just sat there, avoiding eye contact, as if the drama wasn't happening right in front of us. But then, something unexpected happened. A voice broke the silence. Cold, but firm. "Why did you do that?" We all turned. It was Teo. I almost didn't recognize him at first. He was sitting in the back corner, barely visible, just another customer among many. But his voice had the kind of authority that cut through everything. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make everyone in the room turn to him. The man who slapped Moyo blinked, looking confused for a second. Then he sized up Teo and scoffed. "Who are you to question me?" Teo stood up slowly, his face a mixture of annoyance and something more serious. "I'm the guy who's going to make sure you leave this place before I decide to put you in your place," Teo said, his voice steady, but there was no mistaking the threat in it. The man laughed, clearly not understanding the seriousness in Teo's tone. "What do you think you can do? You think you're tough because you're sitting here in your fancy suit?" But before he could say anything else, Teo stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "I think you're about to apologize," he said, and the tension in the room thickened. There was something about the way Teo spoke that made everyone fall silent. The man hesitated, looking at Teo and then at Moyo, who still stood there, her hand pressed to her cheek where the slap had landed. For a moment, I thought he might try to fight back. But then, something changed in his expression. Maybe he saw Teo's calmness and realized he wasn't dealing with someone he could bully. The man scoffed again but didn't say anything else. Instead, he muttered something under his breath and stormed out of the buka. Teo turned to Moyo. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone softening. Moyo, still stunned, didn't answer immediately. She just nodded, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "You don't deserve that," Teo added quietly, looking at her with something I hadn't expected. Compassion, maybe? Or was it curiosity? Moyo nodded again, still speechless, and walked away to the back of the buka, leaving Teo standing there, his expression unreadable. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of something that would change all our lives. I couldn't stop thinking about it, the way Teo had stepped in so effortlessly. He wasn't just some rich kid playing hero. There was something different about him. But he wasn't like the other guys who walked into places like Mama Ngozi's and treated people like dirt. I didn't know what to expect next. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't surprised when Teo came back the next day. And the day after that. This was just the beginning. There was a lot more to come. Teo wasn't like the other rich kids I'd seen around Lagos. They were flashy, loud, always in the latest cars, and constantly making sure everyone knew how important they were. But Teo? He wasn't like that. He was calm, collected, with an aura that made you want to take him seriously, without him even trying. He didn't flaunt his wealth. In fact, you might have missed it if you weren't paying attention. He wasn't wearing designer clothes or driving the latest car, at least not on the days he came to the buka. He dressed simply, never trying to stand out. But his presence? You couldn't ignore it. I remember the first time he came back to the buka after the slap incident. It had only been a couple of days, but the buzz around town was already growing. Word spread fast in Lagos, especially when a governor's son was involved. People were talking, whispering about the girl from the buka and the rich guy who had defended her. But Moyo? She didn't want anything to do with it. She was too proud to take pity or even show gratitude. She told herself she was just doing her job, but I could tell she was rattled. Every time Teo walked in, she avoided making eye contact with him, focusing on her customers or running around the place like a blur. But Teo didn't give up. He was persistent like someone on a mission. He would sit in the back, order his food, and just watch. At first, I thought he was just here to pass time, trying to forget whatever was weighing on him. But it didn't take long before I realized that there was something more to it. "What's with the guy?" I asked Mama Ngozi one evening as I helped her clear the tables. "He's been coming here every day since the incident. Does he live here or something?" Mama Ngozi didn't even look up from the pots she was scrubbing. "Ah, my son, he's not like those other rich people. That one, he's a quiet one. I don't know why he comes here, but he's got his eyes on that girl." Moyo, that's surprised. "But she's just a waitress. What does he want with her?" Mama Ngozi raised an eyebrow, as if she had been expecting this question. "It's not always what you see. Sometimes it's not about what she does. Maybe it's who she is." I frowned. Who she was? Moyo wasn't anything special, I thought. Just a regular girl from the streets, working hard to get by. But Mama Ngozi was wise. She'd seen things that I hadn't. Meanwhile, Teo wasn't giving up. He kept coming back every day, ordering the same thing, amla with ifo and goat meat. And every day, Moyo would serve him without saying a word. But it wasn't just the food that kept him coming back. He was watching her. He was studying her. One day, when there weren't too many customers, Teo finally spoke to Moyo. He didn't wait for her to serve him. Instead, he stood by the counter, his hands in his pockets. "Moyo, right?" he asked, looking directly at her. She didn't answer right away. She just kept wiping down the counter, pretending like she didn't hear him. But Teo wasn't going to be ignored. "I saw you 2 days ago," he said, his voice calm. "You were shaken up. I get it. It's not easy being in the spotlight." Moyo finally looked up at him. Her face was still a little bruised from the slap, though no one could see it under the makeup she'd been wearing. She didn't smile or respond right away. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, as if waiting for him to say something more. "I don't know why you're here," Moyo said, Her voice clipped. "But I'm just trying to do my job. You don't have to keep coming back." Teo smiled slightly, his eyes gleaming with something between amusement and curiosity. "I know," he said. "But maybe I want to help you." Moyo frowned. "Help me? Help me do what? I'm fine. I don't need anyone's help." Teo's smile faded a little, but he didn't give up. "I'm not here to offer charity, Moyo. I'm just here to offer a chance." Moyo looked at him, confused. "A chance for what?" Teo's eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, there was no one else in the room. "A chance to get out of here. To live a life you don't have to hide from." Moyo shook her head, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't need your pity. I'm fine right here." Teo didn't press further. Instead, he took out a business card from his pocket and slid it across the counter to her. "If you change your mind, Moyo, call me. It's an option." And with that, he walked out of the buka without another word. Moyo stared at the card for a long time, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over in her hands, unsure of what to make of it. But she didn't call. Not then. That night, Moyo didn't say a word to anyone. She just sat at the back of the buka, staring out into the dark streets. It was hard to tell if she was thinking about the conversation or just trying to forget about it. "I knew she wouldn't call him. Not yet, at least." Moyo was stubborn, and she didn't trust easily. But something in Teo's words lingered. There was an offer there that she couldn't shake off. Days passed and Teo kept coming back. Each time, he would ask if Moyo had thought about his offer, and each time, she would shake her head and tell him she was fine. But the conversations got longer, and Moyo began to open up, bit by bit. She told him about her family, how her mother had died when she was young, and how she had taken on the responsibility of caring for her younger siblings. She told him about her dreams of something bigger, something better, but how it all seemed so far out of reach. Teo listened, really listened, without interrupting or judging. And Moyo? She couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, he was the first person who truly understood her. But even as the days passed and the conversations became more meaningful, there was still doubt in Moyo's heart. She kept telling herself that it was all a fantasy, that Teo was just another rich guy playing games, promising things he could never deliver. She didn't want to fall for him. She couldn't afford to. But the truth was, the more she resisted, the harder it became. The buka was always full of chatter, and that evening was no different. The moment Teo stepped in, the room went quiet as it always did. People had started talking about him and Moyo, but no one dared ask directly. Not with the governor's son walking in and out of a lowly buka like it was any other place. But the whispers were there, lingering in the corners of the room, filling the spaces between the clinks of utensils and the murmur of voices. I had heard the gossip for days. Some of it was harmless curiosity, others filled with judgment, but it was impossible to ignore. People wanted to know why Teo, someone so clearly different from everyone else, kept showing up at the buka, and more importantly, why he was always speaking to Moyo. "Moyo!" Nkechi, the waitress who worked alongside Moyo, called to her from the other side of the room. "You know that rich guy? The one with the clean shirt and soft hands? They say he's after you, oh." Moyo, who was wiping down the counter, didn't answer immediately. She just kept working, avoiding the question like it wasn't a big deal. Nkechi wasn't the only one who had noticed. Everywhere she went, the talk followed her. Even the customers whispered behind their plates of jollof rice. It was hard not to notice the strange dynamic between Moyo and Teo. The way he'd come in, order his food, and then sit back and watch her work. One evening, after a long shift, Moyo finally couldn't take it anymore. As she sat down to rest for a moment, Nkechi came over with that same teasing grin. "So, when are you going to admit it? You and that governor's son, huh?" Nkechi nudged her, her eyes dancing with curiosity. Moyo looked up, meeting Nkechi's gaze, but didn't answer right away. She knew it was coming, but she still wasn't ready to talk about it. "What's it to you?" Moyo finally asked, her voice quiet but firm. "We're just talking. That's all." But even as she said it, Moyo felt a tight knot in her stomach. She wasn't just talking. She was beginning to feel something for Tayo, something that made her uncomfortable and excited at the same time. But it couldn't be real. It couldn't. Nkechi chuckled. "Just talking? But do you know what they're saying? They say that man's eyes are on you. He's not just here for the food." "I'm not interested in whatever rumors they're spreading," Moyo snapped, her face flushing. But inside, she wasn't so sure anymore. The more she saw Tayo, the more she felt something she didn't want to feel. That night, after she finished her shift, Moyo sat outside for a while, taking in the humid Lagos air. The buka was quiet now, and the streets outside were alive with the sounds of cars honking, people shouting, and music blaring from nearby shops. She was so used to this chaos that, sometimes, she could block it out, just focus on the rhythm of her thoughts. But tonight her mind was racing. She kept thinking about Tayo's words, his calm demeanor, and the way he listened to her. He didn't look at her like everyone else did, with judgment in their eyes. He saw her as someone with potential. And that scared her. Why was he even interested in me? Mo thought. I'm just a girl from the streets. I don't belong in his world. He's a governor's son. What do I have to offer him? The next day, Tayo showed up again. It was like he had become a fixture at the buka, a presence Moyo couldn't ignore, no matter how hard she tried. This time, he didn't just sit at the back. He walked straight to the counter, where Moyo was busy taking orders. You look like you've been thinking too much, Tayo said, his voice light but thoughtful. Moyo forced a smile. I have a lot on my mind. What else is new? Tayo didn't seem fazed. He sat down at the counter, his eyes never leaving hers. I've been thinking too, he said quietly. About what you said last time, how you don't need my help. I understand that. But I'm not here to help you in the way you think. Moyo's heart skipped a beat. What was he getting at now? What do you mean? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Tayo leaned in slightly, his gaze steady. I'm not here to save you, Moyo. I'm just here to offer you a choice. A chance to see what's out there. You don't have to take it, but you should know it's there. It's up to you. Moyo's stomach churned. He made it sound so simple, like it was a choice she could just pick up and carry with her. But it wasn't that simple. Nothing in her life had ever been that simple. I'm fine here, Moyo said, trying to keep her voice steady. I don't need any of that. But deep down, she wasn't so sure anymore. That evening, as Moyo was leaving work, she ran into one of the regulars who had been coming to the buka for years. This man, Chijiok, had been sitting quietly in the corner for a while now, but as Moyo passed, he called out to her. Moyo, come here, he said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Moyo turned and walked over to him, trying to hide her unease. Yes, Chijiok? He looked at her for a moment, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. You know that Tayo, the governor's son? Don't trust him. Moyo blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in his tone. What do you mean? Chijiok shrugged. These rich people, they play games with poor people's lives. He might seem all nice now, but don't let him fool you. They never mean what they say. You think he's here for you? He's probably just bored. Moyo's heart sank. The doubt Chijiok planted in her mind made her stomach twist. Was Tayo just playing a game with her? Was he just another man trying to use her for his own entertainment? That night, Moyo lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling. The questions swirled around in her mind, never letting her sleep. Was Chijiok right? Was Tayo just another rich guy who didn't care about her? Or was there something real there? Something that could change everything? It had been a few days since Moyo's conversation with Chijioke, and every time she saw Teo, the weight of his presence felt different. There was an intensity there now, something she couldn't ignore even if she tried. She found herself thinking about him more than she was comfortable with. Moyo tried her best to keep her distance, to remind herself that nothing good ever came from getting too close to men like Teo. He was rich, he was the son of a governor, and no matter how many times he promised that he wasn't here to play games, it felt like it was all just too perfect, too good to be true. But there was something about the way he looked at her, with understanding and patience, that made her question everything she thought she knew. One evening, after a particularly hectic shift, Moyo found herself walking home under the dim streetlights, her mind racing. She wasn't expecting anyone to stop her. Lagos was busy, loud, and filled with distractions. But as she turned the corner near her house, she saw Teo's car parked at the side of the road. Her heart skipped a beat. He was standing by the passenger door, his eyes locked on her as she walked closer. There was something different about the way he stood, like he was waiting for her, but also giving her the space to make up her mind. "I didn't think you'd show up," Moyo said, trying to sound casual, but her voice betrayed her. Teo smiled, his gaze soft. "I wasn't sure either. But something told me you'd be here." Moyo crossed her arms, looking away, not wanting to let her emotions show. "What do you want, Teo? I've told you already that I'm fine. I don't need your help." But even as she said it, she felt a nagging sense of doubt. Why was he still here? Why didn't he give up like everyone else would have? Teo stepped forward, not intimidating, but close enough for Moyo to feel the warmth of his presence. "I'm not here to change your life, Moyo. I just want you to know that you have options. No one's ever really given you that, have they?" Moyo paused, her chest tightening. She was angry at herself for letting his words affect her. She had promised herself she wouldn't get caught up in this. But here she was, listening to him like he held the answers to everything. "You don't know anything about me, Teo," she said quietly, her voice faltering. "You don't know what it's like to work every day just to survive. You don't know what it's like to give up your dreams because you have to take care of everyone else." Teo didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the same business card he had given her weeks ago. He held it out to her, but this time, his hand was steady, no rush in his movements. "I know that I don't know everything about you, but I want to. And if you want, we can figure it out together." Moyo looked at the card in his hand, the simple black and white design mocking her. She wanted to refuse, to throw it away and walk off into the night like she had done with every other opportunity that had come her way. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he wasn't rushing her. Maybe it was the way his words seemed to reach something deep inside her, something she had buried long ago. "You're not like the others, are you?" Moyo asked softly, her voice trembling. Teo shook his head, his eyes earnest. "No, I'm not. And I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I'm here and I'll be here, whether you take the card or not." Moyo swallowed, her throat tight. "I don't know if I can trust you." Teo smiled gently, and for the first time, Moyo saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "You don't have to trust me. Just take the chance. For once in your life, Moyo, take the chance to do something for yourself." For a long moment, Moyo didn't move. She stared at the card, then at Teo, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had spent her entire life taking care of others, her siblings, the people around her, but what about her? What about the dreams she had forgotten somewhere along the way? Finally, she reached out, her fingers brushing against his as she took the card. It felt like an unspoken agreement, a promise to herself that she would at least consider what Teo was offering. "I'll think about it," Moyo said, her voice quiet but resolute. "But I'm not promising anything." Teo smiled again, a genuine warmth in his expression. "That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. He turned to walk back to his car, but then paused, looking back at her with that same soft gaze. And Moyo? Whatever you decide, just know that I'm not like everyone else.